Oh, hi. Welcome back. Oh. Hi, I'm Marc. I used to work as a senior artist for Blizzard Entertainment, and now I teach art for a living. In this new episode of my weekly series that I call YouTube Art School, I'll show you where you can get my professional brush set for free and how to actually use the brushes to get the most out of them. Wow. Also, like I mentioned in last week's video, this is going to be the last episode in this office right here because we're moving in 3 days. So next week, we'll be in a new office. Should probably start packing. So bye-bye, office. I'll miss you. Oh boy, quickly, let's get this class started. Alright, so if you haven't grabbed my free brush set, you can do so right. Wait a minute, I lied. They're not free. You can only download them if you pay the fee of 1 like or 1 sub. That's much better. Now, what was I saying? Oh, right. You can grab them in the top right corner of the screen right here or down in the description below. And if you already had them, I just updated 5 of them, added 1 new brush and kind of reorganized them a little bit. So go and grab the new version. What are you waiting for? Now, these brushes might be free, but they are the ones that I use all the time. The brushes that I use the most. I absolutely love them. They're made for Photoshop, but they also work in Procreate and Clip Studio Paint and maybe a bunch of other software as well, as long as they accept Photoshop brush files. Now, of course, brushes don't make the art. It's how you use them that will make a difference. With that out of the way, let me show you how I use them, because unless you understand the tool, it'll be pretty much useless. All right then, let's check them out. So here are all the brushes from the free pack, and let's see what they're like one at a time, starting with the 2 that are Photoshop defaults up here. So I always keep those in here because they're really useful. Actually, there are 3 Photoshop defaults. That's another one here. So let's get those out of the way first. The first one is just 1 pixel, so for super small detail. The other one is a slightly bigger, just round brush, no features other than that. Then we have just the typical soft brush. Once again, no texture to it. Fourth one here, the other soft brush, is going to complete my kind of basic set. And the main difference here is going to be a little hard to spot, but you can probably see like the little bit of texture that you got here, like a little bit of noise to the edges versus the basic one that has nothing. That's the main difference. Next, we have my trusted line art brush and a few variant, the number 1. And by the way, if you already had those files and you saw a couple of updates, that's because those damn brushes here, these two would not save properly and didn't behave the right way at all. Now they should. So 4 brushes for line art, and then moving on to the texture brushes. So we have the first one here, a comb, simple comb, a texture rust, nice little spray. This one here also looks like a spray, but works a lot better when used at a bigger scale. You'll see soon enough. Then I have a simple hairbrush, some stripes, my world famous cube brush, and a dust brush. So that's the full set. Let's see them in action. All right, so I grabbed an older painting, and let's start with the first one here in the list, the fine line. So this 1 pixel brush is usually going to be for these kinds of things here, these highlights, where I want something to be very nice and sharp, where there's no softness to it at all whatsoever. So great for highlights, especially the kind of specular highlights that you would have here when a material is very shiny. That works awesome. This is also the brush that I use to sign my name when I'm done. The next brush, the hard round. This one I'll rarely use to just to paint. This is going to be a brush that I use mostly as an eraser. So this way I can get some nice clean edges when I erase. This is a very lightweight brush, so it works really well at all sizes. There you go, my eraser brush. Now the soft round brush will usually be for things like gradients or highlights. Let's say we look at the layers here. I can pop a new one, select a like overlay mode, something a little warm. With a nice gradient brush, I'm able to get these nice highlights. I mean, it doesn't look too nice right now, but let's say I want to make this area here glow. Well, I can do that pretty easily with that brush. Let's say I want to make this little thing here glow some more. I can also use the hard light blend mode for something that's a little more opaque. Once again, great for highlights, great for gradients, those kinds of things. Now, if we look at the other one here, the textured soft round brush, this one will be used more as a shading brush. So the clean one, I keep it for gradients, but that one, the textured brush, is ideal for things like skin. Has a little bit of a texture, but not too much, so it doesn't look as fake as the default brush. But on top of shading, I also use it for gradients, just like the other one. but for gradients that don't need to be as clean. So maybe like a gradient on the ground or on part of a character. For cases where I would want maybe a little bit more texture, something that has slightly more character. From here, we are entering line art territory. So you'll have seen this one, I'm sure, if you've been watching some of my videos recently. It's going to be my line art brush. This is what I use pretty much all the time for line art. So as you can see here, it gives this nice little texture, looks pretty traditional, has a lot of character to it, very nice. But also, I really like it as just a blown up version of it. So once scaled up, you get some nice low res textures, which is a look that I kind of like. Works great for things like just speed painting. And well, it's going to be the same idea for all the other line art brushes. So they're all great as just line art brushes. They have like slightly different features. So this one maybe a little softer, not as rough, but also not as dark. This one here is a little more texture to it. The tip is slightly different, so it behaves differently. Also a little bolder. And then we have the rough one here. This one has the most texture, but as you can see, as line art brushes, they're quite similar. When scaled up though, I think the difference is a little bit more obvious. So this is my typical line art brush, line art bold, and line art rough. So as you can see, quite different when scaled up. And it's cool because it gives me a bunch of options for textures if I scale these up. Talking about the scaled up version, let's say I wanted to add a little bit of a gradient or maybe a little more, just a little more texture to this thing here, to the ball. Well, let's try it. Blow this up and then press very lightly and you're able to get this nice soft random details in here. Very useful for a lot of different scenarios, especially things that are organic like nature, ground, leaves, bushes, dirt roads, so many options. So moving down from there, we have the comp texture. So this is going to be just a rake texture. Looks a little bit useless like this, but it's going to be very useful for smaller details. So let's say I want to add maybe a little more texture here to this pipe. There you go, now has quick texture, but that's not how it shines. How I use this brush for the most part is going to be as a mixer brush. Mixer brush mode activated in Photoshop. Of course, this only works in Photoshop, but you get some really nice texture this way. Once again, this is going to be great for nature scenes, but just just as a blending brush, you get some really cool texture. Subtle, it looks a little bit traditional. So this one mostly, at least I use it mostly with the mixer brush, but used in other software or without the mixer brush. Still a very nice brush to add a little bit of texture. You just don't want to go too crazy with this because it does look quite digital. The next one here is going to be the texture rust brush. So pretty self-explanatory, but this is just a great textured brush. I call it rust, but it can also be very good for like these kinds of situations. So let's say you want to damage something, or maybe add a little bit of dirt to something like this here. Or maybe the paint is chipping on this thing here. Really good to add damage. Weathering. And we have 6 to go. So the next one is going to be the texture spray. That one I usually use for things like dust or dirt on something. You can see a little bit here, all the noise on the paper. That's what this was. Great for snow as well because it's pretty dense. Or yeah, just like particles in the air. Let's say it's very dusty in here. Somebody just blew on this, and all these little bits of pollen kind of flying in the air. Great for effects, but also, like I said, great for just basic texture. Let's see, I want to damage. I want to make this vase here feel like it's been painted, but not evenly. There we go. Very nice. Wow, amazing. Next up, we have the texture organic one. So this one, like I said, looks very similar, but this one works great when it's scaled up like this. So it has kind of like this organic texture to it. So let's say I have something like this, and I can want to add some details to the background here. Maybe make that bush feel a little more detailed. Boom, there you go. Then you can select a darker brush after that to add some depth. Let's say I want to add some cool texture to the ground. You can pop a new layer, deform that into perspective to make it fit the scene. And now I can just paint over it with the right colors. Boom. Super easy texture, and the fact that it's a little abstract makes it work pretty well in a lot of different situations. But it is a spray after all, so you can use it also to scale down, just to add a little bit of texture to things. It looks a little more solid, more like sand. It's a little harsher. And we're almost done. Next we have the hairbrush. Pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, great for more realistic hair. So you don't want to bother drawing every single brush strokes. You can get something pretty quick with this brush. Of course, I call it hair, but it can work for fur, different types of fabric. You can also use it just as a texture brush, scratches maybe, or for nature, anything that looks like hair, long and stringy, like blades of grass or plants, or even, let's say I want to give her a little bit of a beard or a mustache. I don't know why I would want to do that, but now she's got a little bit of stubble. Here you go. Take this away. Next one, the stripe brush here. So this is going to be great for smaller details. Let's say you have a belt, maybe something like this here on the side, and I want to give this a little bit of a texture, some extra details maybe. That's going to be great for that. When used as a mixer brush, it also does some pretty cool stuff. So, you know, it can get some cool like damage or like patchwork effects like this. And of course, also great for environments for the same reason. Some really cool organic shapes like this. Looks like branches, like maybe little bushes. Very nice. Then we have my cube brush, or my square brush, like I used to call it. And this is going to be my go-to for most cases. So whenever I do speed paint, it just has a nice, almost like watercolor quality to it with hard edges, but not too hard. This is the stamp. You can see it's got a little bit of a texture to it. I'll say this requires maybe a little bit more dexterity to get some nice clean gradients out of it. So what I'll do to create a gradient, let's say from this color to this color. First, you can do a basic pass by color picking kind of the two main colors and pressing very lightly on the center. And then from there, once you start to have kind of these in-between colors, you can source these now and paint with that. And then this allows you to create like a nice gradients this way that has a little bit of texture at the same time. Once again, kind of reminds me of a watercolor slash, you know, like acrylic gouache maybe. That's another brush that I'll also use as an eraser because it's nice and opaque, erases quite well. It's very predictable. And then the final one here, well, you'll be able to see the dust brush. You'll be able to see it in action already here. So it's all these little things there. That's the dust brush. Works better against a darker background. Don't select a size that's too big. But when you select a very small size for it, get some really nice, sharp, clear dust particles in the air. And let's say I want to add some depth to that. Well, I can create a new layer, do a bunch more, and then blur those. And this way you kind of get like particles that are out of focus and then other particles further behind that are in focus. I will almost always use this brush to add tiny particles at the end of my paintings. So another one of my go-to brushes. And there you have it. Short and sweet. That is how I will usually use these brushes. Like I mentioned at the beginning, these are my daily driver brushes. I use them all the time, basically every day. Now, when it comes to more advanced paintings, let's say I want to make something that has a little more texture or speed paintings or things like that, I'll use my other more advanced Photoshop brushes for my advanced set. And that said, that's also where I have my shading brushes, but it's not as intuitive to use, not as easy to use. So I have them in a separate pack for those that are a little more comfortable experimenting with that kind of stuff. But all of this to say, these paintings don't paint themselves. It's all you. And so hopefully now that you know how I use these brushes, you'll be able to maybe use them better, or maybe in ways that you didn't think about initially. Either way, I hope this was helpful, and use the brushes responsibly. All right, I'll see you next.